All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. That's not the page we want. There we go. All right. Welcome everybody. It's night. I lost track. 19, 20. How many nights of live streams have we done so far? Yeah. So welcome. As always, we start off with the preamble to the Constitution as a reminder of our duties as Americans. And you're invited to join me in reciting it. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. You know, those five duties, the framers laid out sort of a holistic vision of what America could be, what America should be, right? They addressed all sorts of things in those five duties, starting with establishing justice, making sure that people are treated fairly, have access to justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, don't fight, good policy, looking out for each other by providing for the common defense, understanding that this is a shared responsibility, not just an individual one, promoting the general welfare, health, happiness, prosperity, and then last, securing the blessings of liberty. After we've worried about everyone else, last, we worry about securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We have a duty towards the future. So it's a real holistic real holistic vision that the framers offered for us in the Constitution. And so those five duties, as we know, make up the five titles of the Trump-Biden peace plan, 101 policies to upgrade America's social contract. Tonight we're going to take a break from looking at the legislative package and instead talk about the American Union model and how it is also a holistic offers a holistic set of solutions to issues in America. Because it's not just our political system that's broken. It's not just our political system that's driving everything else that is causing the social fabric of our country to fray and tear and break. There are other issues in this country, and to a certain extent, the politics reflects that. Politics reflects American culture as it has changed over in the previous decades. It affects our social, it reflects our social structure as well. The division that still is present in the United States. And so how do we address this? And while the American Union, the big shiny object for people this time of year especially is political reform, both electoral reform by unionizing and swing voters in order to bring political power to the marginalized millions, but also the legislative reform through the People's Legislative Assembly and crowdsourcing the work that Congress is failing to do. Congress is failing to act. So the American Union offers a way to do an end run around it. So what is a constructive program? Let's start with that. Well, it's been described as a positive program of self-improvement for both individuals and for communities. So rather than focusing on bringing down a defective social structure, which the constructive program can run parallel to that. But instead of that being the focus, primary purpose is constructing a new one, constructing a better paradigm. And so this is the constructive program is something that was designed and say invented by Gandhi in India, and he made let's pull up. He made the spinning wheel as the center of his program for a couple of reasons. One, one of the biggest issues facing India was poverty. And so poverty was, spinning was productive work that could be done by almost anyone. And then he created a market for the homespun fabric, the khadi, and for the yarn that was created by spinning. He created a market so that people could buy it and sell it. He created demand by making the wearing of khadi as a symbol of national pride, a symbol of support for the cause of independence. But that wasn't all that it did. That spinning was a simple, repetitive task which encouraged contemplation, gave people time to think while also being productive. It was also a way of influencing, putting pressure on the British, because by replacing the foreign textiles, people wearing homespun cloth instead of the manufactured stuff from Britain, put economic pressure on them. And the boycott of British textiles was definitely felt in England. Yeah, and as I think we talked about last week, as far as one of the duties of nonviolence being leading by example. Gandhi led by example. He wore khadi. He wore khadi. He spun every day. He encouraged others to do it. When he became president of the Indian National Congress in 1924, it was he made spinning mandatory. You buy yarn from somebody else who already spun it, but he made spinning as sort of like a mandatory dues. People to further encourage people to participate in this. All right, so the American Union. Let's look at some of the information here. Remember a few nights ago we talked about Dr. King and his letter from Birmingham jail. He gave the 4 stages of nonviolent action. The 4 stages of nonviolent action were determine what injustices exist, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. And so in the American Union's constructive program, where we can address electoral, social, cultural, and legislative issues, these things can also be applied to the 4 stages of Dr. King's nonviolent and violent action. And so, starting with the People's Legislative Assembly determines what injustices exist and develops solutions. The Fast for Peace is an invitation for cooperation, for people to come together to negotiate, to both listen and to be heard. The cultural reforms include the 30-day challenges that enable members of the American Union to take on higher roles. I don't think we've talked about those before. We'll get into that a little bit more this evening. And then direct action, of course, is the American Union voting together as a block of swing voters on election day. All this is gone into in more depth in my novel, Looking Backward from the Tricentennial, and it digs into all of these aspects: the Fast for Peace, the People's Legislative Assembly, and the 30-day challenges. It digs into all of those, not the not the direct action. It doesn't take place over election day, but so I encourage you to check that out if you'd like more of the larger picture. All right, it's a little graph I put together. A constructive program strives for the pinnacle of truth, and so these four stages are sort of represent climbing up the mountain. Everyone starts on stage 2, the Fast for Peace. Everyone is welcome to participate. There's no pre-qualifications. Everybody is there. Call it universal basic karma, if you like. Now, to go up higher, you got to kick yourself back down to stage 1, which is the 30-day challenges, because change starts with ourselves. And so, leading by example, it helps establish the moral authority to craft these changes for America. So this stage contains, I got a chart here, self-improvement challenges, which include 30 days of sobriety and 2 24-hour fasts. Plus, there's optional stackable challenges to help each cohort. They come 8 times a year. Each cohort gain knowledge about the principles of nonviolence and the path up the mountain of reform. It also serves as a vetting process for participation in those higher stages of the American Union, to be an organizer and to be a delegate to the People's Legislative Assembly. So the sobriety, giving up recreational intoxicants for 30 days, sobriety is an important building block of a nonviolent social structure, because intoxicating substance, toxic, the very root word reminds us they are poison. And so their use has an aspect of self-harm. And so by the architects of this new social structure opting out of that implied violence, it helps demonstrate self-control and an ability to put the general welfare, the welfare of others, over our own pleasure. There's no other qualifications to participate. Everybody can participate in these, and it qualifies people to go back up, work their way up to stage 3 and stage 4, being organizers in the American Union and delegates to the People's Legislative Assembly. Let's see what we got here. All right, so let's talk about social reform. One of the issues in America is we've become very inward focused. We've been self-centered. There's a focus on self, of greed. That it comes through as greed. It's overconsumption, instant gratification, and you can see that greed. There's an aspect of hoarding, overconsumption, binge watching is a totally normal thing to do. Instant gratification, right? Anything, you can get all these things one click on demand. You DoorDash someone else to do grocery shopping for you. You can watch whatever you want. And this focus on self, of personal comfort. We've lost our way. Remember, the Constitution starts off with a list of duties. What do we owe each other? Those are the values that this country was founded on. Now, doesn't mean that people won't tell you different. People won't try and say, oh no, this country was founded on protecting our rights. It wasn't. It was founded on, what do we owe each other? We're supposed to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And so this this balance between rights and duty has been tilted. You might remember John F. Kennedy famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And when people assert their rights, when people assert their rights, when people focus on their rights and say, what they're really saying is, everybody owes me this. I am owed this. It's about me. And, that's not always a bad thing to focus on equitable treatment, fair treatment for people. But to the idea that it starts there and then first you owe me rights and then I'll take on some responsibilities is backwards. Duty comes first. First you accept your responsibilities to look out for each other. And as we do that, then as Gandhi said, the rights will follow like spring follows winter. And so the American Union as a bottom-up power structure, instead of the old rights-based power structure where rights were like a shield to protect you from abusive authority from above, is the bottom-up people-powered structure. And so it has to be built on duty, asking what do we owe each other? Again, the framers wrote it down for us. They give us a very clear list in the preamble. So when we focus on duty, what do we owe each other, and ask how do we best fulfill those duties, we can still get to the same place. We will get to the same place of establishing civil rights as a way of ensuring that we have ended poverty, we've ended mass incarceration, we've ended the endless wars of looking out for each other, addressing Dr. King's triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. So that framework will help address some of our social issues, especially through the Fast for Peace. And I think I've showed this slide before, but let me pull this up again. So the fast obviously has other aspects of self-purification, just like the 30-day challenges. It is free and accessible. It is voluntary, encourages personal growth and reflection. Again, a lot of these things are similar to the spinning wheel in Gandhi's case, right? That it was a voluntary thing, encouraged personal growth and reflection. Fasting also brings physical and mental health benefits, but it's that invitation for cooperation, for negotiation, for saying, look, I understand I'm not going to get everything that I want in this life. Well, we're all have to compromise. That's part of being an adult. And so by coming forward, by demonstrating an ability to willingly give something up, we create a garden where negotiation and compromise can grow. I'm not going to read all of these, but it does serve as the hub for the American Union framework. And again, it's not required for basic membership. It is necessary to take on higher roles in the American Union. All right, so this stage 3, the electoral reform, American Union organizers. American Union organizers have completed a 30-day challenge and commit to participating in the Fast for Peace each month as a way of, again, leading by example. And the organizers refuse to engage in this lesser of two evil politics. So no demonizing each candidates, instead focusing incumbents versus challengers, trying to help the incumbents accomplish, ending poverty, ending mass incarceration, and ending the endless wars before the election, trying to negotiate a contract extension for them on our terms. And if they refuse, as a union of swing voters, we are positioned to deliver consequences. I'll go ahead and pull this back up. Just as a reminder of how few voters it takes to control the balance of power in Washington, D.C. You know, in 2022, it was 37,000 voters across 5 House races, 2 Senate races. 37,000 voters could have flipped the House from Republican control to Democratic control, and the Senate from Democratic control to Republican control. It is literally that close, small percentages of the electorate. And in 2020, it wasn't much bigger. It was 42,000 that could have flipped the House from the House and Senate from Democratic control to Republican control, and similarly 24,000 to flip the Oval Office. It's very small numbers of voters. It's a sports stadium worth of voters that can get leverage over Washington, D.C., over the political process. And we can use that leverage to end poverty, end mass incarceration, and end the endless wars. So we talked about social, we talked about cultural reforms, self-purification, the 30-day challenges. So again, offering a positive vision for America. All right, we have, offering a positive vision for America. You know, if you're a parent, you know, maybe you've got a son who's growing up and looking for a role model, right? What is it to be a man in today's society? And the American Union model offers a positive vision of sobriety, of service to others, of helping to be a helper in society, to work together, to cooperate, to address problems, instead of just, you know, yelling, screaming, pointing fingers, instead of just thinking of oneself, thinking of others. Again, this is a cultural problem. This didn't happen overnight. We got here over a period of years, and the tide has to be turned somehow, because as we can see from the deep polarization within our country, we can see that this is not a sustainable path. That for us to be so bitterly divided as a nation is not a healthy path for us, and has very real consequences. I don't know how many friendships, how many families have been divided by politics, where, you know, if you and someone else, you pick opposite colored parties, that can be a deal breaker. The other thing I wanted to do tonight that I forgot to bring up is looking at the current polls, which we always do on these nights where we skip looking at the legislation. Just again, to build on what I talked about a few minutes ago of the closeness of politics in the United States. All right, so I just pulled this up nationally again. Harris and Trump, neither one of them able to get 50%. Pennsylvania, key battleground state, nobody can get 50%. Wisconsin, nobody can get 50%. Michigan, nobody can get 50%. Georgia, nobody can get 50%. Nevada, Maine's 2nd Congressional District, North Carolina, Arizona, Oregon, a little more lopsided. And even scrolling down, we can see Iowa, and it's not until we get to Florida that we see Trump has actually achieved 50.2% in the polls. But these are our 7 key swing states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, and Arizona. Those 7 states have 93 electoral votes. And again, It's that tiny little gray wedge there that's going to decide the winner of the Oval Office. Those are the tiny little gray sliver is going to decide who the next president of the United States is. We, the people, have the power to be the deciders. We can be the calmer heads that prevail by offering America real solutions. And so, yes, the race continues to be extremely close. All right, coming back to our four-stage model of our constructive program. Let's talk about the People's Legislative Assembly and the process we went through over this last year, and how the process can work going forward. So the People's Legislative Assembly meets virtually, right? When the framers wrote the Constitution, the only thing they knew how to do was to have everyone be in the same room. They had to communicate in person in order to communicate in real time. But this is the 21st century, so we don't have to be held back by the technological restraints of the 18th century. In the 21st century, we can communicate in real time all around the country, all around the world. And so a virtual People's Assembly, meeting through Zoom or similar, has the ability to do a couple things. One, be bigger, be more representative than the 435 members of Congress. The framers had intended for the House to be more representative. They had a target of 30,000 people per representative in Congress, and as we're now up to like over 250,000 people that each member of Congress represents on average. It's not practical for one individual to represent 750,000 people effectively. And so by having a larger legislative assembly, we can address that problem in America, better representation. So a virtual assembly has that, and participation to be a delegate in the assembly is available to organizers. So again, going back to our chart here, working our way up the mountain. So completing a 30-day challenge as a demonstration of commitment, a demonstration of intention. Again, similar to the Fast for Peace, just drinking water for 24 hours isn't hard as much as it takes an intention. And so demonstrating sobriety for 30 days isn't hard as much as it takes an intention. And so demonstrating that intention once let someone become an organizer, and twice per year lets a member become a delegate to the People's Legislative Assembly. And so this would start off with 3 delegates from each congressional district, chosen by the members using liquid democracy. What we have now with representative democracy doesn't work very well. It worked okay in the 18th century when the framers wrote the Constitution, because virtually everybody was a white landowning male who worked on a farm. And in the 21st century, though, our population, our occupations, our lives are much more diverse. And so delegative democracy, liquid democracy, allows you to... So the problem with representative democracy, right, is that if you don't cast your vote for the winner, then maybe you don't get represented. And so liquid democracy instead allows you to assign your voting power as a member of the American Union to exactly who you want to cast a vote on your behalf. So, so you can make sure that the person that you want to represent you has your proxy for your vote. And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone in your congressional district. You can assign your voting power to any delegate nationwide. But the delegates with the most voting power in each congressional district are selected for seats in the assembly. Anyone who's not selected for a seat still gets to vote. They're just restricted in how much they can participate. Seated delegates get assigned to policy committees to develop an area of expertise. They review the individual proposals and pieces and make a recommendation to the full assembly. Again, as we talked about, there's 101 different policies in the Trump-Biden peace plan broken down into those 5 titles. And so by having committees who focus on just one title, they can develop the expertise to get at the root problems, the root causes of the root causes, the best way to address those 5 duties in the preamble. And then distributing the information to delegates, to members each month, holding sessions online, giving people 24 hours to vote, asynchronous voting, so you don't have to. Again, one of the problems with, when I served in the legislature, there was an awful lot of retired people there because they met, during the day, during the week, and working families often didn't have the ability to just take time off during the week and be able to serve in the legislature. On one hand, I was fortunate I was self-employed and could set my own schedule. On the other hand, serving in the legislature cost me probably 35% of my income. My income probably fell 35% because of the time that it took to serve. So by holding sessions virtually, and instead of expecting everyone to vote all at once, instead giving people 24 hours, it makes it more accessible to everyone. And an annual session in an election year is broken down into 3 phases. So next year in 2025, the goal would be that people would start developing policies for a 2026 legislative package and putting together a draft legislation. And then in 2026, opening the assembly on January 15th, Dr. King's birthday, with the Fast for Peace to set our intentions, and introduce this draft package into the People's Legislative Assembly. And as I think we've talked about, as a Satyagraha campaign, you can't introduce new topics, new things as you go along. You've got to state up front what your demands are. You can't just keep adding demands as you go along. And so putting that list out there January 15th for the election year, this is what the American Union is fighting for this year. That can then be reviewed. Demands can be winnowed away if needed over those first 2 sessions, crafting the language and finalizing a package. You could call this, again, going back to Dr. King's 4 stages of a nonviolent action, internal negotiation, and of course, determining the injustices that exist. And then the external negotiation phase comes in August and September, offering Congress the opportunity to weigh in and propose amendments to the legislative package. Direct action with the American Union then comes after that, from the end of September, when the final package is released on September 21st, the International Day of Peace, through October 15th. And, as my own personal commitment to this effort, I've been fasting since September 21st, and I'll continue fasting through October 15th. I'm getting tired of this after 18 or 19 days. It's become a slog. I'm just really tired of drinking water with electrolytes in it. And I'm looking forward to being able to break my fast on October 15th. My weight's down to 179 pounds, so I'm still going to be in a healthy range for through next week. And I invite you to pledge for the Fast for Peace on October 15th through the website anamericanunion.com, and I'll invite you to a special Zoom where we can break our fast together at around 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 15th. Yeah, so this is the goal. This is not just addressing our political problems. The political problems, are symptoms of the larger issues. So much of what does get introduced in Congress is partisan posturing, things that politicians know will never go anywhere, and not a sincere effort to work together. And so again, the Fast for Peace offers a framework for that. It offers a monthly truce. On the 15th of each month, let's stop fighting. Let's listen to each other. Let's see what we can agree on, what we have in common, and what we can build on. And if people want to go back to fighting on the 16th, they can, or they can also decide to maintain the truce. They can also decide to continue to be willing to work together, to communicate and collaborate with others who on the surface may not seem like them, but in fact are probably driven by the same very basic, very human goals and desires, right? We all want stable lives. We want a society that's healthy and functional. Again, that holistic set of duties that the framers laid out for us in the Constitution, they do a pretty good job of offering a vision of a healthy, functioning society where we establish justice, where we keep things tranquil, we defend or make sure we're defended, we promote the general welfare, and then last, make sure that we secure the blessings of liberty, that we maximize our freedoms and opportunities after looking out for others first. All right. Well, I'm not sure what else I have to really add this evening as far as the constructive program. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I think we'll probably just go ahead and wrap things up. I'm not seeing anything else here. Let me skim through my notes real quick. Yeah, let me just read some of the conclusions. Again, the policies and the strategies contained in this, the self-purification aspect, the idea of not hating politicians and political parties and instead striving to find common ground, it will make some people uncomfortable, some of them more than others. But that's intentional. We have to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. As Brian Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, has said, fixing America will require choosing to do uncomfortable things because sometimes it is necessary in order to create justice. And so one of the purposes of these 30-day challenges is to give individuals a way to demonstrate a willingness to be uncomfortable, especially in service of larger societal goals. And as we've talked about, supporting this legislative package requires the compromise, and fasting and compromise are two sides of the same coin, not willingly giving something up. And so the Fast for Peace as a monthly routine, as a monthly activity, it helps people practice this idea of, you know what, I don't need to take everything that I possibly can. I can I can do with less. And so this sort of cycles back to the idea of America as a place of overconsumption. And so practicing doing with, making do with less, having less, embracing the idea of underconsumption once a month supports this. You know, obviously we all need to eat to live, right? I'm fasting to my capacity with 24 days without food and with minimal a dozen or so calories a day. This is a fast to capacity. And so similarly, do we really need to consume as much as we do? You can tie this back to the legislative package, to the value added tax, right? So a consumption tax where the more you consume, the more you pay. And so it raises this question, do you really need to consume all of these things? It creates a financial incentive to consume less. Similarly, the pollution fees that we're going to talk about next week. Do we really need to pollute so much? We're creating a financial incentive to pollute less, to address the environmental issues that are not that are building up and that are building up in our planet. And remember that duty to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Our kids are set to inherit these things. So, what else? Just the very idea of de-escalating electoral politics. Unfortunately, politicians are frequently rewarded for doing outrageous, inflammatory things. They are rewarded with media attention, and they are rewarded with dollars, with donations, with campaign funds. And so if we want to de-escalate electoral politics, and I think there's pretty strong evidence that most of us do, we've got to be able to offer voters a constructive alternative to the status quo. And, you know, that's the slide that starts off these presentations. The American Union is a constructive alternative for 2024. And so working your way up the mountain, working your way up to be an organizer means accepting that duty to spread a positive vision. One that, again, ends poverty, ends mass incarceration, ends the endless wars. And showing how swing voters can wield the power of nonviolence to achieve it. One of the other analogies I like to use in the case of organizers is they're like franchisees, and they are representing a national brand to their local communities and to the digital sphere, but offering the same set of solutions all across the country, across all 470 federal races, until as we build up towards that critical 3.5% support threshold of support. And last, not least, this idea of crowdsourcing the legislative process in the style of open source software or like Wikipedia. It is a natural progression for democracy. Again, where current politicians, they seek political capital by generating controversy. And instead, a people's legislative assembly rewards the creation of mental discipline, of leading by example, and by creating a people's legislative that is a parallel structure to the dysfunction in Washington, D.C., we can move power away from the entrenched interests and return it to where it rightfully belongs, to the American people. And that's how together we can form a more perfect union, just like the framers wanted to do in 1787. All right, I think that's it for this evening. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the legislative package, moving into Title V, and Title V, securing the blessings of liberty. We are going to look at, I gotta check here. What are we looking at tomorrow? I think we're looking at the first few sections in the legislative package, sections 501 to 524. So we're going to talk about universal suffrage and and then what's the other thing? Oh, stabilizing government systems. Yeah, strengthening Social Security, putting an end to government shutdowns and those threats of debt defaults, making government functional again, and taking away Congress's excuses to do nothing. So that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow, and I hope you'll join me from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks.